Hi class, this is Mr. Olson. The focus of today's lesson is on first aid and safety. For this lesson, you will need a pen or a pencil, a piece of paper, and your help folder. Please take a moment to get your materials organized by clicking the pause button. Okay, boys and girls, let's get started. When you see the words first aid, what things come to mind? Please take a moment and write down some ideas on a blank piece of paper. Remember to click the pause button, otherwise this presentation will keep going. Also, remember to bring these notes to class. Lesson objectives. As a result of listening to this presentation, you will come to understand the following. What is an emergency? What do you do in case of an emergency? What are some basic first aid procedures for choking, bleeding, burns, and poisons? These three questions will be answered throughout this presentation. In this slide, we are going to talk about the key term, emergency. An emergency can be defined as a situation in which help is needed quickly. As all of you know, there are many different types of emergencies. For example, fires, heart attacks, robberies, and poisons. All reflect emergencies. The key is knowing what to do in case of an emergency. So, what do we do in case of an emergency? Well, it depends upon the type of emergency. However, most emergencies that are severe require 911. Other emergencies require calling the police, fire department, or your local control number. That said, there are times when you can give first aid during an emergency to someone who is in need. But first, let's define first aid. First aid is the quick, temporary care given to a person who has a sudden illness or injury. As an ocean lifeguard, I have had to perform first aid on many beachgoers. They usually involve splinters, cuts, and jellyfish stings. The key, however, is to take universal precautions anytime you are giving first aid. Can you think of a time when you gave first aid? In this slide, we are going to talk about some universal precautions when providing first aid. Universal precautions are defined as steps taken to avoid pathogens, such as viruses and bacteria, in the body. To accomplish this, we must first wear disposable gloves. Second, we don't want to wear the same gloves more than once. Third, we want to wash our hands with soap and water. Fourth, we don't eat or drink while giving first aid. And finally, we don't touch our mouth, eyes, or nose while giving first aid. The purpose for doing so is to avoid contact with bloodborne pathogens such as viruses and bacteria. In this slide, we are going to discuss first aid for minor injuries. In addition, we are going to talk about the steps taken to provide first aid. Let's begin with a familiar first aid injury: sunburn. Sunburn can be caused by UVA and UVB rays from the sun. As shown in the picture, sunburn causes the skin to become red and hot. When this happens, we should get ourselves or someone we know out of the sun immediately. However, to avoid sunburn, we should wear sunblock or even protective clothing that covers our skin. Just a side note, you can use white vinegar to take the sting out of sunburn. To the right of sunburn are fractures. A fracture is a break in the bone. In looking at the picture, there are two types of fractures: simple and compound. Simple are minor, while compound are major breaks to the bone. When either fracture occurs, you don't want to move the injured part. The best thing to do is to put ice on it, splint if possible, and call 911. To the right of sunburn are nosebleeds. A nosebleed is an injury to the blood vessels inside the nose. When this happens, please have you or someone you know sit down and lean slightly forward. Next, have him or her pinch their nose shut for 10 minutes. If the bleeding persists for more than 10 minutes, call 911. Below sunburn are bee stings. When a bee sting happens, the stinger from the bee will be left inside the skin. As a result, the stinger injects venom or poison into the skin. When caring for a bee sting, you should take the following steps. Scrape the stinger out with the edge of a card or nail file. Next, clean with soap and water and put ice on the infected area. Finally, make sure the person you are caring for is not dizzy or having trouble breathing. If this is the case, then you need to call 911 because they are most likely going into anaphylactic shock. To the right of bee stings are spider bites. Some spiders, such as brown recluse and black widow, can be poisonous. If it is a brown recluse or black widow, call 911. If not, wash the area with soap and water and put ice on it to stop the swelling. Another minor injury are blisters. A blister is an area under the skin where fluid collects. When caring for a blister, please remember to clean with soap and water, cover with a clean bandage, and don't break the blister. Finally, rashes from plants are also considered minor injuries. Rashes from plants can come from poison ivy, poison oak, and/or poison sumac. When this happens, run cold water over the rash and use calamine lotion to stop the itching. It is important to know that not all first aid emergencies are minor. Some can involve major injuries. For example, a major emergency may involve a heart attack. When this occurs, CPR must be given. CPR is a method of reviving someone who has stopped breathing and who has no heartbeat by mouth-to-mouth breathing and strong, rhythmic pressing on the chest. Heat stroke is another example of a major emergency. Heat stroke is harm done to the body due to being exposed to high temperatures. Victims of heat stroke usually show the following signs: rapid pulse, confusion, dry skin, they're not sweating, headache, and nausea. When you suspect heat stroke, call 911 immediately. Still, another major emergency is frostbite. Frostbite is the overexposure of skin to extreme cold. Symptoms include numbness and white, gray, or yellow skin. If you see signs of frostbite, warm the area or person slowly. The final major emergency we are going to discuss is choking. As you can see from the picture, the universal sign for choking are hands over the neck. When this happens, encourage the person to keep coughing. Oftentimes, they will cough the object up on their own. If not, they may become unconscious. When this happens, call 911 immediately. In closing, please complete the handout titled First Aid for Minor Injuries chart. It will be due next class and graded using the rubric on the back. Also, please be prepared to perform some activities next class using the knowledge gained from this presentation. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me at eolson@freehold.twp.k12.nj.us. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this presentation.